Hello, virtual students. Welcome to the Volume Lab, otherwise known as the Rainbow Lab. This is a very cool lab which will help you practice measuring volume of liquids, solids, and gases. Measuring the volume of a liquid is done with a graduated cylinder. It's the tool that we use to get those accurate volumes. Graduated cylinders come in many different sizes. As you can see, there are large graduated cylinders, smaller ones, a bit smaller. They get really, tiny, as you can see. The basic unit for measuring volume with graduated cylinders is the milliliter. So you can see the graduation on some of the graduated cylinders in milliliters, and you basically have to look at where that water level is, and basically look at what's called a meniscus, and that's the little slight curve that you see that the water makes. In this one photo, you can see a slight curve you would measure at the bottom of the meniscus. You also have to pay attention to your scale. Each graduated cylinder size has a different scale. The scale could go in increments of 0.1 milliliters, 1 milliliter, or maybe 2 milliliters. There's all different kinds of scales, so it's very important to know your scale before you begin. Now time to look at our lab. You can find this on my agenda. There is a link, or you possibly have a hard copy printed out for yourself. We are going to be using a graduated cylinder to measure accurate volumes of 3 different color liquids and pouring them into one of 6 test tubes. When those colors enter those test tubes, they will do some pretty cool things, as you will see. Very important to follow directions and make sure your measurements are very accurate. Yes, you will not be able to do this live with us right now, but at the end of this lab, I'm going to give you an opportunity to do this at home where you can possibly reproduce the lab and even share the results with your teachers. We will share your results if you are successful. Stay tuned. Procedures. Number 1, triple rinse 6 test tubes labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 2. Triple rinse a small beaker and a small graduated cylinder. 3. Obtain a small amount of the red liquid in the small beaker from the supply table. 4. Measure exact amounts using the small graduated cylinder. And now we're all ready to go. We have our 6 test tubes ready for filling. Procedure 5. Measure 6 milliliters of red liquid and pour into test tube 1. 6. Measure 5 milliliters of red and pour into test tube 1. Check out that change. 7. Measure 8 milliliters of red liquid and pour into test tube 2. 8. Measure 5 milliliters of red liquid and pour into test tube 6. Direction 12. Measure 3 milliliters of yellow and pour into test tube 2. 13. 7 milliliters of yellow and pour into test tube 3. Measure 4 milliliters of yellow and pour into test tube 3. Measure 4 milliliters of yellow and pour into test tube 4. Measure 7 milliliters of blue and pour into test tube 4. Then swirl. Check it out. Pretty cool. 20. Measure 3 milliliters of blue and pour into test tube 5. You can see it there, down at the bottom. Measure 8 milliliters of blue and pour into test tube 5. Looks pretty good. And finally, measure 6 milliliters of blue and pour into test tube 6. Outstanding. Check out the levels of those liquids. The idea here is that accurate measurements cause the same level of fluid in the graduated cylinders. Plus, following directions gave us the beautiful colors of the rainbow. Pretty cool lab. Don't forget to go answer the questions on the lab on the Google form listed on the agenda. The questions to be answered are on the back of the hard copy or the link to this lab. They're pretty basic and you shouldn't have much trouble answering them. You're going to do this so that you can be graded on this lab. Thank you. Now it's time to get creative and see if you can recreate this lab at home using your own equipment. You don't have to have test tubes. Maybe you could get 6 small glass or plastic containers that you can see through. The smallest you can find, or they can be done with big glasses. 6 glasses lined up. That next thing you do is you need to get something to measure out your fluids. It could be a small unit like a thimble, a tiny Dixie cup, a measuring cup of some kind, because you do want to be accurate. And if you think about it, 1 milliliter could be equal to each Dixie cup. 1 milliliter could be equal to 1 teaspoon. So if you want 8 milliliters, you could simply put 8 teaspoons in and it would be equal. And if you followed your directions just like I did my lab, putting the correct color in the correct glass or cup, just like the directions said, you could get a perfect rainbow of colors right in your very own home. Wouldn't that be cool to recreate this lab virtually using your own things? Also, you're going to need your own colored liquids, and that's going to require some food coloring. You would need to put equal drops of red, blue, and yellow into 3 containers with water and stir them up, and then you're going to have those colors to pull from to measure out your whatever units you're going to use. That's the kind of creativity, enthusiasm we need to see during this time. Also, share a video or picture of what you've done if you can recreate this to your teacher's email, and we would love to give you extra credit for doing that and to share those results to others. Overcoming the challenges that we have before us virtually and reaching out to each other like this is just so cool. So good luck, be safe, and see how this goes for you. Don't forget to answer your questions on your Google form. Have a good day.